So we're going to talk about the basics of working with type in Illustrator. So I have an artboard here that I created ahead of time, and now I want to come up here to my type tool. It is the one that is a T. I have two different ways of putting type on the screen. I can just click here and start typing, or I also have the option to make what's called a text box. The reason you might want to use one or the other is that the text box will automatically wrap your type versus the first option will not. So if I duplicated this numerous times, just to give you an idea, make my process a little bit faster here. I mean, you saw it just a second ago with the lorem ipsum, but to give you the idea, as I add text, that'll wrap. Versus this one, if I keep adding text to it, it is not going to wrap. It is just going to keep going in a line until I actually hit enter and tell it to go to another line. The other reason that this can be problematic is this one, if I stretch the box, actually stretches the type, versus a regular text box just causes the type to reflow. So that's an important thing to think about when you are choosing which one to use. What is your purpose? How are you going to work with it? Might affect what option works best for you. A few other things. So while we're active in the type tool here, you'll notice across the top Illustrator has a control panel that's contextual. We're going to get type options. It's going to allow me to choose a particular font. I have about 4,000 on my computer, so you could pick whatever font happened to float your boat. You can also see it'll let you choose basically the style of it. So this one happens to come with light italic, regular, etc. Some fonts will have only one option here. Some fonts can have sometimes close to 100 options here. It just depends. Then we are tasked with the size, and you can either use one of these default sizes, or you can frankly type any size you want in there. It's up to you as to what goes in. We also have some paragraph options that might look a little similar to Microsoft Word, so it won't really be noticeable here, but we have it already left align, we can center, right align, and some other positioning. If we click on this character tab, we can get more options. This is where we can adjust the leading. We can also adjust the tracking or the kerning here. Tracking affects the overall spacing, versus kerning you typically use between two letters, and we might say, oh, the space isn't quite right, that's not what I want, and so we adjust these two letter spacing. So tracking, overall spacing evenly applied. Kerning allows us to adjust the space between two letters. There's also the ability to do all caps, small caps, super and subscript, underline, strike through here. You can technically stretch the type, but I highly recommend you not. It's usually very noticeable. There are limited cases where it's appropriate, but in most cases, just stay away. You can also go to the paragraph, gives us more options. I especially find this space after paragraph useful. If I don't want a full return, that can be helpful when you're doing forms and things like that, that can come into play. But that's sort of the basic functionality here. You can also, if you don't want your type to stay type, you want to be able to manipulate it, you can come up here to type and create outlines, and this will actually make it a shape, which means I could do crazy stuff like pull one of these points and sort of distort my type individually. So it's not something that you want to use maybe for everything, but it has its purposes. It would also let me use, for example, like the eraser tool, and I could come in and erase part of this letter if I wanted to modify it. So that's reasons to sometimes turn on the text change the text outlines because it becomes just like any other shape. So while it's still active text, it only has texture properties associated. When we convert it to outline, now it's seen as a shape by the program. The other cool thing you can do in Illustrator, so there's all these other options if we kind of hold the text tool down. Anything that has this little arrow or the little corner triangle will allow us to get more options. So area type tool can be great if you have some kind of shape. For example, if we want to be a little, okay, that's still a compound path. But if we wanted to create some kind of crazy shape, let me do one really quickly here so you can kind of see what it might do for you. Let's say I create this unusual shape, and I can use this tool. Oops. And because my font is so big, I might not want to do that. Let me make my font a little bit smaller. Alright, so what it will do is it will now let me fill this space, which can be, depending on what you're trying to do, might be a useful thing. You can also, so if I make a line, you ever wondered, how can I make type curve around something? So I'm going to make my line here to use. I'm going to just make it so you can see the line again, and I'm going to come up here, type on path tool. So that will actually let me type on this, and it will follow the curve. So that's another pretty helpful tool at times that people don't always know is there and available. So those are some of the basics to get you started with type here in Illustrator. There's some more advanced things we could get into, but this is enough to make you dangerous at this point.